Week 9 college football is kind of in the books. We still got some games on tap. North Carolina's almost losing to Georgia Tech. We'll talk about that as we get closer to it. We'll keep you updated as always. But what we want to kind of get into today, what we're going to be doing on this at the first part of the show, we're going to rank the top 4 teams. So the teams coming out this next week. So we're going to be getting the college football playoff and who the next 2 guys are out. So I thought it'd be a fun exercise to go through everybody's teams, talk about them, see kind of, Christian's top 4, Jay's top 4, my top 4, maybe Jeff Bell's top 4 if he shows up. I don't know if he can fit us in as a tight schedule. So we'll see if he comes later. If not, we'll just talk about that. And Jay will just plop up Ohio State as number 1. That's usually how it goes there. But we'll get into it after the intro, and Christian will give us his top 4 first. So hang in there. All right, Christian, you're up. I'm just picking you first just to be a dick. So you're going first. What do you want? What is your top 4? Let me hear them.
All 4. You want all 4 right off the bat?
Yeah, why not? Why don't we just kind of go like that? We'll see as we go through.
All right. Michigan is my number 1 team. Georgia would be my number 2 team. Ohio State would be my number 3 team. And then at 4, I am going with the Texas Longhorns. Do you want analysis on that pick first?
Yeah, let's talk about Texas. Let's get into Texas right now.
Okay. So Texas, to me, they have the 1 loss that's to Oklahoma. They have probably one of the biggest wins out of any of those 4 teams. I think you can make a case for Ohio State being Penn State as the biggest win, but the Alabama matchup for Texas was the moment where I was fully bought into the team, and then of course they blow the game against Oklahoma. But when you look at just top to bottom talent wise, I think that defense holds up. I think that defense can compete. I don't think Texas drops another game. And so when you stack up their resume, I think they're going to have the strongest, the strongest loss. And I think they're going to have just some dominating wins. I know Quinn Ewers is hurt right now. I think it's fairly short term. I think this was like a Malik Murphy 1 week type of thing. Obviously, if Quinn Ewers is out for an extended period of time, I don't know that this comes to fruition, but I'm hopeful that he comes back. I do think that matters. And this Texas offense can keep up with really anyone as well. So that's my team number 4. I think they roll through the rest of the schedule, win the Big 12, and end up in the playoff.
What is your take on that, Jay?
No, I like the Texas pick. I think that's okay. I see this as, in my opinion, I see the top 2 as sort of 1A, 1B. So like Michigan and Georgia, I think are clear top 1, top 2. I actually have Ohio State as number 3 as well, but I would say Ohio State, Washington, and Florida State are the teams that, because they're undefeated, because of what they have in front of them, I'd say that they have the next highest likelihood of getting those next 2 spots. And then I'd probably put teams like Texas, Oregon, Alabama as like that next tier. So I'd say the top 5 kind of feels like pretty clear. Although they're clearly there's going to be Ohio State and Michigan are going to play each other, so that knocks one of those guys out. So that top 5 then becomes 4, and this is college football, so there'll probably be a loss. I mean, Christian talked about before the show how like Washington and FSU, they could be on, could be teams that lose games here. So it does make sense for a team like Texas to be in there at number 4. So if I was doing it, I'd say Georgia and Michigan 1A, 1B. I'd probably lean Georgia right now just because of their last 2 seasons. But I'm a big believer in Michigan. The issue that I see with Michigan is they haven't played anybody tough yet, even though they've been perfect. They haven't played the tough teams yet. We get Penn State and Ohio State with them for the last 3 games of the season, and that's really what makes or breaks their season. And so if they go and beat Penn State and Ohio State, I'm definitely moving them to 1, even over Georgia, just because Georgia, even though they're winning every game, it doesn't necessarily always look pretty, and we can tell that this team is a little bit different than it has looked in the past. So Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and then I'll go Florida State right now. But honestly, Florida State and Washington are it could go either way for me on that last one.
Hey guys.
Hi,
Jeff
Jeff.
showed up. This is Jeff Bell, everybody. I don't know if you guys know him here at the Devy Royale, but we have Jeff Bell that showed up to the channel. He fit us in his easy schedule here. Yeah, I mean, listen, Jay, I think you're not really taking into account that UNLV leads the Mountain West and we beat UNLV. So, like, that is a quality top 25 win because UNLV is going to be going to the top 25. So I just want to let everybody out there know that, Michigan has beaten a top 25 opponent, and that was UNLV. So just kind of go there. Do you guys want to talk about the Michigan scandal real quick or no? Because anybody, well, besides Jeff, I don't need Jeff to talk about the Michigan scandal. Here's what I'll say about the Michigan
my
thing.
top 4. Do I get to do this too? Okay.
Yeah.
You do, but I'm going to go right now and then talk about Michigan. So I'm going to have, for me, I have Michigan at 1. I have Georgia at 2. And I think it, just like they said, it's the same thing. Like when you're looking at both these teams, I think they're 1A, 1B. I have Ohio State at 3 as well. So I'm pretty close with Jay. I think Ohio State, the one thing Ohio State has this year is their defense is very, very good. Like, and that's what's keeping them in games. And this is a weird year because I do think that there's not a ton of elite offenses. And so if there's one year that the defense could maybe win the national title for you, I think it could be this year. And I think that could be Ohio State's strength. And if they do, if they're in the playoff, I don't see how Ohio State loses it. So I'm just going to put that out there now. Just for the gods out here to hear me. So I don't think that they lose in that playoff because that defense is very good, and I think but they have a quarterback and a red zone issue that is glaring. So I think that and a coaching issue. I think especially offensive play calling that we've seen. So there is something to say there. That's why I think I bumped Ohio State to 3. And to me, Florida State's 4 until they lose to Pitt, like I predicted back in April. But I do think that when you're looking at it, Florida State has to be there. I love their offense. Keon Coleman's he's a dude. Like Keon Coleman's a dude. And those guys on the outside, that offense is really good. I think their defense is fine. I think that there's holes, but I do think that their offense makes up for it. And I have Washington right out at the outside. There is a fun scenario, though, where like Alabama, Oklahoma, Washington, like they all have Texas, they all have one loss and they kind of beat each other. But I know the Big 12 title game is going to kind of take care of that. But Alabama's sneaking out there. Alabama's not dead. There is not a dead Alabama out there in terms of that. So the one thing I will say about a Michigan thing, if you've wasted more than 20 minutes on this Michigan sign stealing saga, get a life. That's just what I'm saying about this. Like it is just it is not that big of a deal. I don't think it's a big deal. Everybody does it. I don't care. We whooped your ass, Ohio State, the last 2 years. I'm sorry. It wouldn't have made up for your guys' soft-ass play on the inside. It doesn't make up for your bad, CJ Stroud being bad. Like, you guys got beat. Everybody does the sign stealing. Everybody does it. Like, you cannot tell me that everybody doesn't do it. We just got caught because we're stupid. It is what it is. Like, that's how I look at this. I don't think it's a big deal. Now, saying that, if we win it, we're done. Like, Harbaugh's leaving, everybody's out, and then the NCAA is going to kick our ass. So we might as well just go at it now, and that's how I'm doing it, and I'll never watch college football again. That's kind of how I look at the season for Michigan. They better go do it. So, Jeff, what is your top 4?
Well, first off, prove it that everybody else does it because
stop.
One team.
Here we go. Get out of here. Every single team does it. Every single team does it.
Michigan has beat Ohio State without cheating their butts. So there we go. The last 20 years.
Okay, here we go.
We'll just go there.
I really quick, before you go, Jeff, I'd like to chime in that Ohio State could not stop Aiden Hutchinson no matter what in that one matchup. That was a win. There's a clip floating around where Aiden Hutchinson just put, I think it was Paris Johnson, right on his butt. That still happens, even if he doesn't know the play. I'm pretty sure. So I don't know. They probably all do it. You're probably right, Kevin. But you're right. They were pretty stupid in getting caught. So it's over for you. So,
but I mean, again, if you're wasting more than 20 minutes of your life on this thing, you need to get a life. Like, I cannot fathom spending that much time about this and like on message boards or Twitter with buck nuts and talking about it. Like, get a life, Ohio State fans.
All right, Jeff.
Go
What's
ahead,
your top 4? I'm sorry for interrupting.
My top 4, number 1 is Georgia. Georgia's number 1 until somebody beats them. I mean, talking about narrow victories and things like that, I think is getting a little bit too much. I mean, they've won back-to-back national championships. There's no reason not to have them number 1. Number 2, I would have to probably. It's difficult because I think Ohio State has a better resume than anybody else in the country, given the wins over Notre Dame, which kind of a little bit shines off that, and even the Penn State win, a little bit shines off that, the way that Indiana kind of pushed them today. But I still think that Vegas would have Michigan favored over Ohio State. So I have Michigan at number 2. And so then I would go to Ohio State at number 3. I think Washington over Florida State. Personally, I put a little bit more on that win against Oregon than the LSU win week 1. I think that was. I'm very impressed with Oregon, to be honest with you, and I think I would have them at number 6 right now, and I would probably have Alabama at number 7. Well, I guess I'd have to have Texas over Alabama since Texas beat Alabama, so then I would have Texas at 7 and Alabama at 8. I didn't buy in at all to Oklahoma, and to be honest with you, you guys know my feelings, and I'm glad that they lost today because I think that was a little bit of a fraudulent team that. It was nice to see them lose today. So I was out on them, but I think it's going to be interesting because I don't know. We sit here today and we think that there's going to be 4 teams, but we see over this next month, the last 4 games of the season, it seems like so many upsets happen. We saw one today. We almost saw a second one with Penn State and Indiana. And so that's I think you're going to get a little bit more clarity than maybe what you expect to see right now. But that's kind of where I sit right now. I think that it's just that it's tough because are you going to go with the resume on Ohio State because I think that they do have a better resume, or are you going to go with who the people in the desert would favor, which would be Michigan?
Ohio State's resume is not that great, Jeff. Like, I don't know, like.
Well, well, maybe we should have played UNLV instead of Notre Dame.
Exactly. I mean, that's
game against Notre Dame, but
you barely beat Notre Dame with 10 guys on the field, and then Penn State game did not look great. Like, let's stop pretending like Youngstown State was a barn burner out there in Western Kentucky. Like, you're really going out of the limb there. Like, I know Michigan's
national champions not look great, to be honest with you. I mean, so.
No one looks good. That's the point. I don't think there's a dominant team there. Washington's gonna lose to somebody. Like, they're on the verge. Last week, who they almost lose to last week? Was it Arizona? Who was it last week?
Arizona State last week. Stanford.
Arizona State, right?
Stanford pushed them this week. It's I don't know. Head to head though, I think I like head to head them over Florida State.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, Washington plays USC, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State. It's good. Yeah. It's a brutal schedule.
There's a loss in there somewhere.
They're done. Yeah. I don't know.
Oregon again, potentially in a neutral field if they run all that.
I think Oregon's a better football team than Washington.
They are.
I know Washington
come back in there.
Yeah.
Sneak in there.
Yeah.
I think Oregon's a very, very good football team. Yeah. I mean, I was very impressed the way they undressed Utah today. That looked really good.
I mean, I think Kevin's reaction there. I think that Oregon has the more well-rounded team between the two.
Yeah.
But we talked about the Pac-12 heading into the season. Like, these teams just eat each other up, and I just don't see any of them making the college football playoff. Now, in a year of a 12 team, like 3 of these teams might make the college football playoff, and that's why it's kind of a bummer that we're not getting the 12 teamer this year, because this is the perfect year for it. There are so many teams that I think deserve to at least have a shot at it because it is wide open. But to Jay's point, it's very much so a 1A, 1B situation, in my opinion. Obviously, Ohio State can throw a wrench in that, but it feels like those years where, okay, it's Georgia, Alabama, we kind of know, or it's Ohio State, Alabama, we kind of know that those are the 2 best teams. I know it doesn't always play out that way in the playoff, but and last year's a good example of that with TCU making it, but I don't know. It just feels like Michigan and Georgia meeting in the championship game feels inevitable at this point.
Well, it felt inevitable last year too, Christian, and that didn't really plan out against TCU. But that's because they changed their plays, right, Jeff? Is that what happened? They changed their plays, and then Michigan just couldn't.
Yeah, they changed their signals, and then they couldn't stop. TCU just shredded them. So.
Oh, I miss this. I miss this so much. It is awesome. I'm so excited for this.
I mean,
Yeah, so I think, so outside the four that you named, if we wanted to go there, I know we kind of mentioned it already. Christian, do you have a team that you feel like outside your top four could really kind of make some noise, or even as a national title? Because it really comes down to like 9 teams right now. Like I really feel outside it's Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, or Alabama. I don't see anybody past that can maybe jump in there. Do you see anybody in there that you like?
Alabama. I mean, this is a conversation that I keep joking about it, but it's going to happen at this point. Alabama's going to roll through the rest of their schedule. They're going to roll Georgia. You mentioned it pre-show, Kevin, and I think it's a realistic possibility that Alabama wins out and they end up as the third or fourth team when the final rankings come out, simply because I think Jalen Milroe has taken some steps forward since getting benched that one time. The offense looks a little bit better at this point, but that defense is what they were going to hang their hat on, and they've kind of come around this year. So I'm feeling like it's one of those things where you never count out Saban. We started to count out Saban because of the close wins Jeff mentioned. It's kind of the wins that Georgia have put up have not been impressive. I think you can say the same about early season Alabama, but some of the stuff that they've been doing over the last few weeks when they've been on the field just makes me think, that's probably a playoff team because they're so well coached. They finish games, and now their quarterback isn't as much a liability. In fact, him pushing the ball downfield has been a plus EPA type of deal this year. So when they have that at quarterback, I think they are, realistic national title contenders, which is crazy with how we talked about Alabama a few weeks ago.
I just saw Jay's face get light up when he heard EPA. Did you see that? He's like, "Oh, EPA, I'm here." Go ahead, Jeff.
Let's do a hypothetical exercise here. Let's say a winner of Ohio State, Michigan wins out undefeated. Let's say Florida State wins out undefeated. Washington wins out undefeated. Say Texas wins out, and they beat a 1-loss Oklahoma or a 2-loss Oklahoma team in the championship game. Avenge their loss in the championship game. Let's say Alabama wins out, and they're sitting there with 1 loss, 12-1, week 2 to Texas. Who's going to be number 4?
Alabama.
Even though Texas ran away from them, heads up on the same field.
Won the SEC. They are not leaving an SEC title out of there.
I'd be pissed if I were Texas.
Timeout. I don't think. Yeah, I was just gonna say Georgia's probably out in that case.
Georgia would be out in that scenario.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Georgia's out, so
you'd have 3 undefeated conference champions that are definitely going to make it in.
You'd have Ohio State or Michigan.
I think Alabama beating Georgia last game of the year would certainly jump in front of Georgia. But yeah, I'm saying we've got that head to head. If you've got 1 loss between Texas and Alabama, you don't think it matters.
No, we've seen the playoff committee say that they don't take into account early weeks and they see how they're playing towards the end of the year. They've said this multiple times. They lost to Texas week 2 by 10 points. They beat LSU. They beat us. Listen, they'll look at the schedule. I think Ole Miss was top 10 when they played them. They won that game. Tennessee was a top 15 school. They won that game. LSU's a top 15 squad. Then they beat number 1 Georgia. There is absolute no chance in hell Alabama gets left out of the playoff if they do all that, even though they lost to Texas. There's no way. The playoff committee as well as I do.
I think they probably would too, but that would be a lot of fuel on a fire of Texas joining conference if that happens.
Sorry, I'm trying to look up some strength of schedule stuff, and I'm failing at it. So someone else talk, please.
Jay, go ahead. Give us your take on anything.
All right. So who else would be in my? So I'd say Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. Then I picked Florida State. My next group there is sort of like Washington, Oregon, and Texas. And my money, if I was putting money down, I'd put it on Texas. I think just the balance they have in offense. It doesn't even with the change in quarterback, which they do have a few quarterbacks there that could probably play that offense. I think they have the ability to put up points, and the emergence of Jonathan Brooks and CJ Baxter gives them a strong, balanced offense, which I think could probably play against pretty much any defense in the country and put up some points. So if I was guessing who could make a run, my guess would be Texas as that team that makes the run. One other team And one other team that I don't really think that has a shot, but I just mentioned them is Oregon State. They've been playing really well. And if the Pac-12 if everybody beats each other up, and Oregon State's last 2 games are I think it's Washington and Oregon. If they beat Washington and Oregon, and they're highly ranked right now, if they're able to put that together, their only one loss would be against Washington State. And I do think Washington and Oregon are beatable, even though I do like them. But if this whole conference just sort of implodes by everybody beating each other, then Oregon State could be the one that's sort of left over as a possibility. And I would not like their chances in the college football playoff, so I would argue against putting them in there. But if there's one team that could be standing, they have a decent shot at being that team as a outsider guy. But yeah, my bet would be on Texas outside of my top 4 as the team that could take a run at it.
Thank you for mentioning Oregon State, because it's so weird. Like I was just kind of looking at some stuff tonight and I saw their number of 11. I was like, wow, that's good for them. And then you look at their schedule. I mean, if they run the table and they have their one loss is a 3-point loss to Washington State a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that's interesting. If I were them, I would form obviously the Pac-2 committee and get us together and say, hey, we just beat Oregon and Washington. We're canceling the Pac-12 title game. We're going to go and sit here with this 11-1 record, and we'll let the committee judge that.
They're going to lose to Arizona tonight, though.
Probably.
Okay. Why do you have to just be a Devy
goes.
Downer? Like, come on. I would love to see BJU in the playoff. That would just make me. And as Dabo just loses every game the rest of the season.
Clemson goes 5-7 and misses a bowl. You fix the playoff with Oregon State.
Be fantastic. I found the strength of schedule thing that I was looking for. Alabama has the second most difficult strength of schedule so far. Ohio State is 3rd. Texas is 4th. So it would be a true toss-up. And at that point, by the end of the season, I think Alabama would shoot up to 1. LSU is 1st right now. But Alabama getting Georgia in that title game would obviously put them ahead of Texas no matter what happens, I think, at this point. So I do like your fun hypothetical, Jeff, in that Georgia would miss the playoff after not losing a game until their final game before that playoff is declared.
I'll just mention one other thing. Air Force is ranked right now. Do you guys know that?
They're good. Air Force is legit.
No, I hadn't watched anything about Air Force. I didn't know anything about Air Force.
Come on, you're talking to the Mountain West guy over here. You have to watch Air Force. Air Force is
oh
legit,
my gosh.
It
shocked me.
Too, man.
Shocked me.
James Madison's undefeated still. They're nasty.
I have a tweet about James Madison being fun to watch from week 1 or week 0. And I didn't know that they were going to actually be good. I just thought they were fun to watch. So,
yeah,
pretty crazy.
Yeah, Air Force can play, man. They're let me tell you, like, shout out to academies. They deserve it. They deserve it. They're going to be probably in the Pac-12 at some point. That'd be kind of cool. To notice there. All right. Any other takes on the teams before we jump over to the Heisman?
No more.
Yeah. Okay. Stop wasting time on signals. All right. Let's go over to the Heisman Trophy odds. So here are the top. I don't know. I'll do top 7. I guess we could throw Carson back in here. So right now, current odds that just got updated 17 minutes ago. JJ McCarthy is at plus 240. Michael Penix Jr. is at plus 300. Jaden Daniels is plus 325. Jordan Travis is plus 900. Dylan Gabriel plus 1200, which I wouldn't take that bet anymore. Bo Nix at plus 1600 and Marvin Harrison Jr. at plus 1800. And then Carson Beck slipped in there at plus 3000. Drake May's right after that, plus 5000. What name stands out to you, Christian?
Caleb Williams. No, I'm just kidding. Jaden Daniels to me should be the Heisman front runner. I know that LSU has 2 losses. I just mentioned that, strength of schedule wise, that's because they've actually played a very difficult schedule. What he has done this year has been pretty impressive in terms of, like, I think Jay talked about last week. He's breaking efficiency metrics even for a 5th-year guy. He has been playing the best football of any quarterback, I think. Maybe outside of JJ. JJ is the favorite. I think once he's like the Ohio State game is going to make or break if JJ wins the award, in my opinion, because if he goes in there, he has a massive day against what is a top 10 defense, in my opinion, probably top 5 to 8. Then I think that's probably the Heisman. If Jaden Daniels just rolls through the rest of the schedule doing what he's doing, I find it hard to believe that they would give it to anyone else. And we've kind of seen, last year they gave it to USC, or a USC quarterback, despite having not a great team. LSU is a good team. I don't think that the wins and losses are going to matter too much. So why don't you give it to the most impressive quarterback? I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player in the country, but a wide receiver winning the award doesn't feel realistic ever. Sorry, Devontae Smith. That shouldn't have happened probably, and it probably will never happen again.
We talked about just a minute ago about the most interesting potential deep teams. It's LSU. I mean, is it not? Sitting there with 2 losses, controlling their destiny. If they win next week against Alabama, win out, and they go ahead and beat Georgia, I mean, that's going to, they had a week 1 loss, and then they had a very close loss to Ole Miss back in 4th game. But other than that, I mean, they've been in total control at every other week. And you're exactly right. Daniels could be the Heisman Trophy winner. I tend to look at it as you're exactly right there on JJ McCarthy. If they went out and they beat Ohio State and he looks good against Ohio State, it's his award to lose. If Washington wins out, I think Michael Penix is right there if JJ McCarthy loses out on it. And then I don't rule out Marvin Harrison, even if as a wide receiver, because if they were to beat Michigan, I think we're at the point now where nobody's going to give Kyle McCord credit for that happening. You'd have to think that Marvin Harrison Jr. would have to have a big game in that. And so if they beat Michigan and they're undefeated and Penix isn't undefeated, I think that's going to be a tough case to make, because I think everybody will kind of say that he's the best player in America, just like you said.
Well, I think with Jaden Daniels, he can either win it or lose it this weekend, right? He plays Alabama. Like if they go out there and beat Alabama, if he throws it, and that'd be a really fun story. I like stories now. I'm getting old, and so I like stories and narratives and stuff. Like Jaden Daniels, after what happened to him at Arizona State, transferring, all of the kind of the noise, that would be a fun story there. I agree in that stance. Jay, who do you like? You gonna be the Ohio State homer?
No, JJ McCarthy should win this award. He's having just a fantastic year. It takes a win over Ohio State, but he should win it. My second bet would be Marvin Harrison Jr. I think the odds for him winning the Heisman Trophy went up this week. He had a fantastic catch, a touchdown catch this game. One of those Heisman moment type catches. And, we do talk about a narrative and stuff like that. A lot of times you need a little bit of a narrative and for the most part, Marvin Harrison has thought of as the number 1 wide receiver for the last couple years now, but, he didn't win the Biletnikoff last year. Maybe slighted a little bit, comes out and has a fantastic season. It's basically Ohio State's offense when TreVeyon Henderson has been out. He, having those Heisman moments. So if Ohio State does beat Michigan in that final game, I can see that odds shifting from JJ McCarthy to Marvin Harrison Jr. As that guy. I think the way I see it is JJ and Harrison will be at the announcement, so they'll get enough votes to be there. And usually they have 3 people there. So sure, if it's Jaden, if it's Michael Penix, but he's been kind of falling a little bit. If it's some of these other guys that have odds, I think they'll be there. But if I had to guess, it'd probably be either JJ or Marvin Harrison Jr. Those would be my top 2 guys going in there.
Blind resume. You got 2 undefeated teams. Let's say you got one quarterback's got 2,163 yards right now with 14 touchdowns. One quarterback's got 1,799 yards right now with 18 touchdowns. Do you think that's
Jordan Travis? Is that who you're talking about?
No, I'm not.
JJ McCarthy was the 1,700. So I'm guessing the other one is Jaden Daniels. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's Kyle McCord. The other one.
Oh, it's Kyle McCord.
Oh god.
Ooh,
Oh.
word for Heisman. Jeff Bell said it. Everyone heard it.
I mean that
Well,
if you're gonna put on counting numbers, JJ's not gonna have counting numbers at all relative to some of the other guys.
yeah, so JJ leads in EPA per play, QBR, adjusted yards per attempt, PFF
Get him,
RAS,
Jay.
pass
Get him,
grade,
Jay.
big time throw percentage,
Do they
and
put
also
numbers up under
Michigan,
their names ever? Like
also Michigan
know,
is also
they
Michigan is blowing out these teams, and really letting off the gas at the end, where Ohio State is in a lot of these games. So I get it. Like when it comes down to it and people are voting, they're gonna vote with like who put up 3,500 yard passing and 50 or 40 touchdowns or whatever. The thing is that Kyle McCord, when he did win in big moments, but sometimes it feels like the Buckeyes are winning in spite of some of his decision making and his playmaking, and some of that might be on the offensive line. But it really feels like if Marvin Harrison wasn't there, sort of kind of like bailing him out or being the crutch or whatever, like would Ohio State have won some of those games or pulled out some of those games, or would Kyle McCord look as successful as he had? And I think that's a legitimate concern. So, not only is it just looking at the stats, I think the voters will probably vote with a little bit with their eyes and see that, like Kyle McCord doesn't even look like the best player on his own team. So, how would we do? How would we give it to Kyle McCord over Marvin Harrison, kind of thing?
Do you guys know who leads in touchdown passes in the country right now?
Western Kentucky guy? I don't know.
Well, like realistic options, I guess.
Probably Daniels, I would think.
Probably Phoenix, right?
It's actually Caleb after tonight, I believe. So
it's a weird year. This has been it's a weird year. Like that's the thing about this season.
Well, so I know everyone's like out on Caleb Williams according to some sites. But like finishes up the season, Washington, Oregon, UCLA. I know he's had a rough go for the last few games. I think he turned it back on this week. If he goes out there and has 3 Heisman-like games, I wouldn't be shocked if they gave it to Caleb again. I know a lot of people say, they're not going to give it back to back. The narrative isn't there, but like that's the best. I said Marvin Harrison Jr. Caleb's still the best player in college football. And I know that there's narratives around the Heisman and everything, but like there was no narrative last year. It was just Caleb was the best player in college football. I know he's not going to lead in QBR and EPA per play, but if we're talking counting stats, he's probably going to be up there. And if he goes berserk over these last 3 games, I could see it still. I could see it.
Any love for Blake Corum out there at plus 12,000?
I put some money on Blake Corum like 2 weeks ago, and you crushed me in the chat for that. But I mean, JJ gets knocked out, and Corum goes for 3 or 4 touchdowns against Ohio State, and people are going to say, "Hey, he had 35 touchdowns this year."
I think from a betting standpoint, I like the Marvin Harrison bet just because the odds are so good. Like I could see them doing exactly what Jay said, like just throwing it up to him, 3 or 4 touchdowns, the last 3 games of the year, like just looks really great. They win the Big Ten. They do all these fun things. Like that could be like a Marvin Harrison-esque type story. And that's where the fun and that's where the value is, in my opinion, right now. Like I'm not comfortable putting money on JJ because I just don't trust him. Like it's a good defense because I haven't seen it except for UNLV. So that's the problem. Like I don't know what that looks like. And I think for me, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. Jeff's got to stop with the Kyle McCord thing. Like, have you watched him play football? Like, I don't understand what we're talking about here.
I just think it's funny. I think statistically, when you look at some things, because I was told that Kyle McCord didn't have the counting stats, but
Kyle McCord is a terrible football player. Like, I don't know.
That's not true. That's not true. I've had so many arguments about Kyle McCord. He is not as good as the last few Ohio State quarterbacks, and I think that's problematic for Ohio State fans because they don't know what to do right now. So, sorry, guys.
Oh, so they took CJ Stroud for granted, huh?
A little bit. I think. I don't know. We're sitting here with two Ohio State fans. I'm trying not to get
Go ahead, Jay. What do you got?
All right, so this year, JJ McCarthy on a QBR 93.7, Kyle McCord an 87. An adjusted yards per attempt, JJ McCarthy at 12, Kyle McCord at 10.5. On an EPA per play, JJ McCarthy 0.78, Kyle McCord 0.52. I understand like the total yards, but like so far, unless you're taking into account some sort of like defensive adjustment, I guess we'll really see who JJ McCarthy is against Penn State and Ohio State. But right now, I mean, not looking at total stats, looking at like who I think could be the better player, the thing is that, you know, those numbers that I'm reading out for JJ McCarthy, they're better than Kyle McCord's, but JJ McCarthy's at the top of all of college football in all of those categories, and Kyle McCord's not close to the top. So there's so much of a gap there in the difference between them in QBR and EPA per play and stuff like that, that it's not even like close when you're looking at all those types of metrics.
Well, and anything, he shot himself in the foot. I mean, McCord's done after tonight. You know, 2 interceptions, a fumble. Like he was the only reason why Wisconsin was in that game at all. I mean, Ohio State should have beat them by 4 touchdowns tonight, and it was a little bit embarrassing that they didn't. But it was all on McCord.
So just want to give you guys an update if you're listening to this live. North Carolina lost 46-42 to Georgia Tech. Shout out Georgia Tech. 4-4, 3-2 overall. They play well. Haynes King, 287 and 4 touchdowns. Dante Smith, 22 carries, 178 yards and a touchdown there. Haynes King, Texas A&M. Maybe you should have hung on to Haynes King. Maybe that should have been a priority out there for you. On the other side, I mean, Drake May had a pretty efficient game, 17 for 25, 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. Amari Hampton looks like the real deal. 29 carries, 153 yards and 2 touchdowns there. But this just goes to show you got to have defense, man. They gave up 24 points in the second quarter and 22 in the fourth quarter. And North Carolina drops to 6-2 and 3-2 in conference. I mean, just based on this result too, Florida State looks pretty set up to. They should win the ACC and go undefeated. Like if they don't, that's a huge downfall, right?
I think the biggest thing right now is we're falling into coming into this year. We knew that there was probably not any great teams, and we probably thought there's a big cluster of teams that are right there together. And I think that there a little bit is what is happening right now is we're seeing these teams sitting at 8-0, and we're seeing these things. We're seeing them blow out a team here or there, and it's tricking our mind into thinking of like that they're up to the standard that we've seen for past national champions or past playoff teams. And I think what you're going to see over this last month is as that pressure mounts on those teams, similar to what happened with TCU last year, where TCU was, you know, surviving. They were really strong, and then it got to the point where they were surviving through the last couple of weeks, and then they ultimately lost the Big 12 championship game. And I think that you're going to see these kids that are positioned better than what they thought that they were going to be coming into the season, and everybody is going to give them their best shot over the last month. And I think you're going to see a lot more upsets than what we normally see. We started to see it today, and it's one of those things of like the last couple of weeks, it started to get closer and closer. And you started to see some random ones like Georgia Tech beating Miami or things like Clemson losing, obviously a couple times, things like that happening. Now I think you're going to start seeing the ones at the top get chipped off. And so every single week that a team doesn't lose, like I said, I ripped on Ohio State a minute ago for not beating Wisconsin by 4 touchdowns. They went into Camp Randall and won a primetime game. And so it's at some point you're stacking wins. And when Michigan actually plays a team like in week 13, you know, maybe they'll be pushed as well.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State's kind of set up for a look ahead this week. Kevin mentioned it a few months ago. They're the team that goes undefeated until they see Pitt, and then they somehow lose to Pitt. If that doesn't happen, they have Miami. That's the reason it's a look ahead. Miami is a tough football team. I recently heard Tyler Van Dyke in a top 3 quarterback discussion or top 4 quarterback discussion. So that train is rolling again. So I think Miami could give Florida State some trouble, and I think that's the team that I think is going to disappoint down the stretch because they've had their moments. You know, we think back to the Boston College game where they should have blown that team out. They let them kind of hang around. I think we could see some similar stuff among the top teams, like Jeff's saying, but Florida State to me is the one that's a little unstable there, despite the clear path to winning the ACC. Those are the types of teams that the pressure gets to them because they do see that clear path, and then they start looking ahead, and then they drop one. And Florida State dropping one, I don't think completely rules them out of the playoff, just because of that big win against LSU at the beginning of the season. But I just don't see the committee putting them in over even like the loser of Ohio State, Michigan. I think would get in ahead of one loss Florida State.
Yeah. Any concern? So we had this conversation about Caleb. So Drake May sit out the rest of the year?
Should be traded to Ohio State.
My funniest thing I saw on Twitter today, or X, or whatever the hell you call it now, Jeff likes to troll like Ohio State, his own fans, and so I saw him reply. Someone said, "Can you trade Caleb Williams to Ohio State?" And someone said, "Is this satire?" No shit, it was satire. Like what is? And like they were dead serious. Like they did not understand why he would say that, and that is why Jeff Bell just wins at Twitter, like because he gets idiots that comment like that, and that is just. But of course, it had a Ohio State flag in his profile there. Can we talk about Travion Henderson though? He kind of bounced back tonight. Yeah, 24 carries, 162 yards on a touchdown in a 24-10 win that they got out of there. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for McCord as well. Obviously, Marvin did Marvin things, but Travion. He loves playing Wisconsin. If he could just play Wisconsin his whole career, he would have 2 Heismans probably, based on what we see. But this is the Travion we like. 24 carries is really good. He had 4 catches for 45 yards as well. Like, this is what makes him running back 1 in a lot of people's eyes. So what are we thinking in terms of Travion Henderson? I saw some things about like Braylon Allen maybe, and it's like Braylon had a bad game. I think he had 2 fumbles, did not look great out there. On the other side, though, Travion, this is the type of game you like. I think there's a cluster of running backs there, but I still think Henderson is slightly above that. Like I talked about last week where I was going to flip him, but I didn't have the balls to do it. And I left Henderson at my running back 1 on my big board. And that's kind of where I keep him at. What did you see from him tonight, Christian?
Good player. I mean, that's a healthy player. And I think, we've talked about the problem with him is really just staying on the field at this point. I think he showed a lot of the things that I've wanted to see from him, which is like between the tackles, can you navigate, gaps and things? Can you see the field opening up? And I think he did that pretty well tonight. Ohio State's offensive line got some good push, but I think the broadcast was even saying like, oh, the great run from Travion, but that's great blocking. It took Travion kicking out into a nice hole on the outside for it to be an explosive play. He was breaking tackles. He stiff-armed a guy into the ground. That was nice to see. But he was just bouncing off tackles. And that's one thing Trey Benson was kind of doing the same thing over the last few weeks where you're starting to see them get a little, stronger with their runs. And that's something I've wanted to see from both of them. I'm pleased with what we saw from Travion. I tweeted out that's still RB1. If he can stay on the field, that's still the most talented running back coming out in this class. So I hope he keeps it up. He's got to do it the rest of the year, I think, to keep that RB1 status. But good player, and like you said, if he can play Wisconsin every week, the good thing, there's a lot of Wisconsin defenders in the NFL. So, I mean, he could just keep that going on Sundays, I guess.
But even circle it back, like that's the kicker on just judging Ohio State in general, is that they haven't had Travion Henderson and they haven't had Emeka Egbuka on the field. And I don't know, outside Brock Bowers now leaving Georgia, is there anywhere in the nation how these top teams that have lost anyone near that impactful? Like, I don't think so. And so to put those 2 elements back in that offense, especially Travion into that run game, you're talking about Traynham looked okay when given opportunity, and Mayan Williams is what Mayan Williams is. But when you got Henderson back there, a guy that can take a ball 80 yards every single time he touches it to score, that adds a completely different element to the offense, and it changes how you're going to defend Marvin Harrison Jr. And then when you get a Egbuka back in there, that changes things as well. And so I think that, and the other thing too is obviously the narrative is out on that 2024 class. Everybody's out on the running backs, but if Henderson is healthy and finishes the year strong, just like he did this past week, Why is he viewed way differently than Jahmyr Gibbs, outside of Jahmyr Gibbs being the 9th or whatever 12th pick in the draft? Like, I think prospect profiles, I wouldn't view him that differently. And I think that when you look at home run hitting ability, all those things, and I think there's not a Bijan in this class, and there's nobody Bijan that's going to pop out anywhere. But if Henderson finishes the year strong the next 4 or 5 games through the playoff, the way that he is capable of, he's going to be valued in Dynasty as soon as he hits it, just like Gibbs, I think.
The only difference will be draft capital, because I don't think any of these guys get drafted in the first round. So I'm not saying it's this. I'm just saying how Dynasty values people that are drafted in the first round. There's certain narratives about that. So I think as a prospect profile, yeah, I think that I love Henderson. I loved Henderson more than Gibbs last year. So I can't sit here and say that he's not. You just know how the market. I think that the running back market's weird in Dynasty right now. I don't know. It's a weird thing because, yeah, he's value right now. Like I just said in the comments, there's some values he's going to be because they're not going to like him there. But is there a team that maybe he gets drafted to at the back end? I don't know.
If the Eagles take him at 31, what happens?
I'll be sad because I have Swift everywhere, bro. I don't know. What else do you want me to say? That's a terrible one. But yeah, I think, obviously, if you have one of those teams at the back end grabs him, what if Baltimore takes him?
Yeah.
That would be my ideal spot for Trayvon Henderson, because I do think that he fits that scheme really well. So there are some spots where you're like, oh yeah, I really like him there, but he's got to stay on the field, right?
He does.
I like this comment. Probably the Falcons drafted him because it doesn't make sense, but it does. Yeah, probably. But yeah, that's what I was thinking there. Any other takeaways outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. in this game? I don't know. I think JC, he talked about it. He was DMing us and he said right now I think it's G Scott, right? Who's the tight end? It's G Scott, right? Yeah. He is the 5th leading receiver in the Big Ten right now, or some stupid stat like that.
Cade Stover.
Or Stover. That's disgusting. That is gross. As a Big Ten, that's gross. I can't believe that he is the 5th best receiving option in the Big Ten.
Well, I mean, who's the 3rd best offense in the Big Ten? I mean, is it Maryland that got shut down by Northwestern today? Is it Penn State that looks at
it's not Iowa
multiple weeks? I don't even know who could you say is the 3rd best offense in the Big Ten.
Washington. Would Washington be the best offense in the Big Ten this year? Yeah, right.
I mean, probably them or Oregon. I mean, Oregon would be right there too.
Oh yeah, that's fair. God, who is the best? That's gross. Nebraska's 5-3. I didn't even notice that. Shout out Matt Rule.
They've won a ton since everyone stopped watching them.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Is Sims doing well? I completely forgot.
He's not playing
football.
They benched him. That's why.
Who the hell is Heinrich Herberg?
Exactly.
I think he's a transfer.
Jay, you know who this guy is?
No.
It's really a shame that Iowa get the automatic loss from playing Michigan or Ohio State, and is probably going to sneak into the championship game because, yuck.
Oh my God, I can't believe that's gross. I didn't. Northwestern's 4-4 in the Big Ten. This is how they beat Maryland today. That is bad. Wow, Big Ten.
Rutgers is 6-2.
That is Shiano though, right? We're just gonna give our props to Shiano out there, or no? Did we like Shiano or no?
I like Shiano. I don't think he's done anything bad to merit not liking him, and I'm impressed with the team building that he's done at Rutgers. He can't really seem to do that anywhere else, but that is what that is.
He was a pretty bad NFL coach, if we're being honest.
Very bad NFL coach. He was a Buckeyes coach, so
he's better than Urban Meyer. Oh, of course that's why you like him. I was wondering where the nuance was with that conversation, and we found it. Any other things that highlighted today, guys? Any big performances that you like? UCLA beat Colorado.
Ollie Gordon, man. Ollie Gordon went for 270. I think it was 271 today, and he went for 282 last week. 550 yards in 2 weeks. I mean, it's pretty good.
Todd likes him. Todd Vincent in our Discord, and just overall really good Devy writer. He's been really high on him for the last year. So shout out Todd there. I was gonna highlight him in my risers and fallers video this week. He runs weird, but he runs efficiently. So there is that. And you seeing him, he's only a sophomore. So thinking of value wise, in that class, the 25 class is shaping up to be a pretty good running back wide receiver class. I don't know about the quarterback class, but the running back wide receivers, there is some value in that class.
Jaden Knott is one of those guys.
Mhm.
He torched USC. I don't know what his final stat line was, but he had 160 yards in the first half because Alex Grinch is the worst defensive coordinator in the history of football, it seems. But also, we're talking about guys that run weird. Ott has the longest strides I think I've ever seen. And I'm in, man. I think he's just so talented. He's got so much burst. He's so fast. We talk about home run hitting running backs and how that might be overrated. It seems like it's not with him because I think he does have some nuance between the tackles as well. So I'm really, really excited to start honing in the grades on the 2025 guys or my grades on the 2025 guys because I currently have him ranked. I'm probably super low on Ott because everyone's low on Ott, it seems. So
yeah, he had 153 yards and 3 touchdowns today, including a 60-yard touchdown and a 43-yard touchdown. So you're talking about big playability. Yeah, that's what you had there. I think Jay liked Ott.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
No, go, Jay. Jeff can shut up. You just you have to talk through it. Just talk through it. That's what we've learned.
I would just say sometimes it's a little confusing because you look at a guy and they just pop on the data, but then you listen to people that know what they're talking about and the guys that watch film and they're like, well, you should take that with a grain of salt. That he maybe doesn't profile as the best NFL prospect, and you see a guy like Jaden Knott and Quinshon Judkins for their freshman years both have somewhat similar number profiles. So the profiles look very similar, and Judkins is a top 5 Devy running back pick, and Jaden Knott is a 7th rounder or something like that. And trying to reconcile that, it's a little bit tough. So I can't just go specifically by the numbers. I do have to weigh the fact that if he's really not going to get the draft capital, if he doesn't profile as that NFL running back, then I have to kind of push that in the numbers. But Jaden Knott had the numbers wise for his first 2 years is pretty great, pretty elite from a market share, accounting numbers perspective. And if he does start to get the draft buzz, that's when all things start clicking in the right direction, and then it works. But I'm always a little bit hesitant on that kind of thing because a guy like Sean Tucker last year, he looked really good numbers wise. Outperformed looked really great on everything I looked at. And then I, hear guys like you guys that were like, hey, be warned, or, there may have been something medical going on there with his draft capital, but, he doesn't look like a NFL running back, and those types of things do weigh heavily. And then so you have to think about, okay, if people are saying those types of things about Jaden Knott early on, then I have to weigh that and into the process. But numbers wise, it looks good for Jaden Knott. So we'll see if he starts getting more of that draft buzz, draft capital buzz type thing.
A name I hadn't heard before today. I don't know. I'm sure Kevin is in on him because Kevin's in on everybody. I'm going to say this wrong, I think, probably, but Tawi Walker from Oklahoma looked pretty good when given his opportunity today with Marcus Major out of that game. I mean, everybody in Kansas knew that Oklahoma was not going to throw the ball in that game, and they were selling out to stop the run, and he still looked very, very strong when given opportunity. He's right in that 215-ish range. He's got some power, some natural elusiveness, and some speed as well. And so it's somebody that I don't see on the radar for anywhere, but again, maybe I'm not tapped into the right areas.
No, you're right, unfortunately. Yeah, Jeff just gave away one of my secrets though, because when you're in on everybody, you can't be wrong. So there is also that. So like that's what he's
I
insinuating
guess
there.
they
No,
first.
yeah, you could be first every chance you get. No, I think Walker is interesting. I do think he's a junior 5'9", 215. He kind of fits that weird profile. We'll probably be writing about him and the rookie guy coming up when we write about 75 running backs that come out early. And we'll be talking about him and that profile that you have there. Devin Neal had another good game today. I'm going to keep telling the Devin Neal train. I really like Devin Neal. And, 25 carries, 112 yards and a touchdown. So sticking with that game. Kansas beat Oklahoma. We should probably mention that. He had 2 catches, 12 yards. With Jason Bean at quarterback, and Jason Bean is a shitty quarterback. Like, he is not good, but he's a really good running back, and he had 62 yards rushing and a touchdown there. The passing attack did not look great on Oklahoma's side. They're a little banged up too. They got some banged up there, but yeah, I think Walker definitely led him there when you saw what he was able to do from there. But I think from a perspective, I moved Devin Neal up a little bit in my big board this week because I think I'm a little lower. I think I was too low, and I was already having him in the second round, but he's fun, man. Like, when you talk about a guy that can be an NFL back, I think Devin fits that profile.
He finds a lot of yardage. He does a very good job of finding yardage. It's one of those things. You see some of these players that they get hit and they fall backwards or they whatnot. He does a very good job of sliding off guys or making guys miss in short areas. And then high end acceleration, I'm not sure is there, but I just love those natural instincts in a running back.
Well, I comped him to Tank Bigsby, which makes me concerned because Tank hasn't done anything this year. So that's where my concern is. Sorry, Christian, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a hot take that I'm willing to throw out there now.
Let's do it.
And it's gonna make you upset. It's gonna make Jay upset. I don't think Bucky Irving is the best running back on Oregon's roster right now.
Jordan James.
Jordan James is a baller. Every time I watch him play, I'm like, oh yeah, that's an NFL running back. So excited to keep watching him because I mean he's eligible 2025, right? So add him into that class. But yeah, sorry for interrupting. Just to kill everybody.
Do you guys think Tez Johnson can play in the NFL?
If he goes to
if he goes to Los Angeles Rams, can he go to the Rams to just go play? Go ahead, Jay. Sorry, go talk about your running backs.
Christian, what was your point again? Sorry.
Jordan James is better than Bucky.
Oh yeah, they're different. They're different players, man.
They are for sure.
But Bucky is under 200 pounds. And
he's like 196 pounds, Jay. Let's not say he's that far under here.
I know we have these imaginary cutoffs where if it's like 1 pound one way or the other, who cares, right? But the reason that the cutoff is there is because it does kind of matter a little bit because
here we go.
The weight will profile into a certain type of player. That's just the way it is. That's how
No, it's not. That's the way you guys make it. You people make it that way. Like,
James is 205, by the way, so a little bigger. He meets the threshold.
He runs a lot bigger than 205.
He sure does. But so Bucky runs a lot bigger than sub 200 for what it's worth.
I think Jordan James can put on more weight. Is still younger. And did he come in at 205 or was he? I can't remember. Is 205 right now?
I thought he came in at
but
190.
For me, you're not necessarily always the same weight that you are when you enter from high school. You'll build on bulk, you'll build on muscle, and your frame and profile will change that over time. Some people sort of max out what they are at high school, and it doesn't really change too much, even though they're in a great weight program with like an Alabama or a Texas or something like that, and it still doesn't even change. But some people have the ability to put on weight and carry that profile going into the NFL draft, and so I'd say Jordan James probably has some of that.
Good player.
I'll tell you the guy you should know. Jonah Coleman is my guy. He's been my guy for a while now from Arizona.
Arizona.
If you want a dude that actually has weight, 225, Jay will fall in love with this guy. So he's 5'9", 225. He's a massive guy. But he's looked really good this season, and he's getting a little bit more of the workload we've seen in the last couple of weeks. He also rushed for 143 yards against USC. Everybody tends to do that. But against a tough Washington State defense, he had 3 touchdowns and 70 yards and 11 carries. I like Jonah Coleman a lot. Like, I think that I don't know how, like, he's not going to ever be that huge kind of running back in college. I don't think the production's always going to be there, but I think for Jonah, he profiles pretty well as like as an NFL back. And I think that's something to watch as we kind of go into it. I know he's not doing great right now in the first half against Oregon State, but I like Jonah Coleman's NFL upside, but he's definitely like a sleeper type guy. We're not talking about a legit top 5 guy.
Ladd McConkey had a day today. Like that was.
I can't do it.
I've been trying not to mention that.
Yeah, the way you had, I mean, there were questions: where is Georgia going to go in that offense without Brock Bowers in there? And he had been quiet all year long up until this point, but he was key for them today.
He's faster, slightly smaller Puka, so Dynasty Twitter will like that. Jay's about to come back and just.
How old is Ladd
enjoy that.
McConkey? Oh, he's only a junior.
27 years old.
No, he's only a junior. He's young.
I don't think he's a true junior though.
Yeah, he is. He's a true junior.
Well, he's a Senior Bowl guy, so he's also on track to graduate because Jim Nagy
he's
has been
smart.
hyping him.
Hey, he hit all the check boxes. He's smart, sneaky, athletic, slot. He could do all those things. Look at that.
I know you're joking. Very
Not really.
athletic.
Yeah,
Very athletic. Very fast player. Can create separation. I talked about it. Todd's gonna just, when he sees this, if he's not watching right now, he's gonna be so mad. I was trying not to talk about Ladd McConkey, but watching him pull away from the defense on his touchdown catch tonight, his first one. Did he have 2? Just 1.
Yeah, I think just 1. 6 catches, 135 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, watching him pull away from that defense, I was like, okay, yeah, like it's still there. He's clearly healthy again. I think one thing that happened this year is a lot of people were not healthy. They became healthy, and they're showing up again at the right time. And I think we're going to see a little bit of a production boost for good old Ladd here down the stretch. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry, Jay.
Any other final takes we got before we get out?
I've been calling out when freshmen, do something. Carnell Tate, Brandon Innis, Kevin Concepcion. There's a guy in South Carolina, Nick Harbor. He's a tight end. He doesn't have much stats. Tight ends don't usually put up too much stats, but he caught 2 balls for 50 yards. He's got 102 yards and a touchdown on the season, but he looks really good. He's 6'5", 241. So, in terms of like calling out freshmen, who could, it seems like the last few games they're getting him a little bit more involved and, making some plays actually. So
somehow South Carolina has like 17 6'5", 240-pound semi-athletic guys that can kind of catch passes. Like it's just like an assembly line there.
I really feel like he should be playing edge though, because he looks like Chase Young. The dude is he is like one of the
ridiculous.
He's a freak. Like this dude is like a freak. Shout out also freshman Eugene Wilson. He needs to be on everybody's radar from Florida. 11 catches, 75 yards, a touchdown. Like I have him in a few leagues. Like I really like Eugene because he's gonna fit what the NFL is gonna be doing out of the slot. Like that's something to kind of look at. Like I like him a lot.
Good player.
All right. We got anything else before we get out of here? All right. No. It was really nice seeing Jeff Bell come back for his triumphant return. We missed him. So everybody make sure you find him and tell him thank you for coming back. We'll be back next week. I think the night Penn State, Michigan next week, right? We'll be able to watch the whiteout, and we'll see if Michigan loses that game. I will not be here, so Christian will be running the show. We will see you guys next week. See you guys.